Welcome, welcome everyone. Find your seat. We're gonna get started in just a couple minutes. Go ahead and find a seat and we're gonna get started here shortly. Bruchim habayim. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Rick. Welcome, everyone. As I was coming over here, as you were driving here, however you got here tonight, I don't know about you, but I had this sense of feeling this is really important. This is really important to be at tonight, to be at for ourselves, for our college students, for our country, and for our world. So I want to thank you for being here tonight and for coming with open ears and open hearts as we are so blessed to hear from Professor Shai Davidai. Thank you so much for being here tonight. On behalf of all of our staff at HEA, I want to welcome you to our synagogue here. I'm Rabbi Sarah Shulman. If you need a restroom at every time, this is what they always have the rabbi do, tell you where about the cell phones in the restrooms, right? So if you need a restroom at all, you go out to the hallway, you'll see the Yortzeit plaques, you could make a right there, and the restrooms are on the left. If you need a non-binary restroom, you can head into our offices or downstairs right where you entered. I've already seen so many great selfies being taken, feel free to take pictures if you want, but we would just ask that you put your phones on silent so that we're not interrupted here tonight. I want to take a moment and thank Bill and Lynn Geller. We are here tonight because Lynn and Bill had a vision for Israel education at HEA, and specifically this program. And so we are so honored that you have made this program possible in memory of Jerry and Lee Jaffa. And I'd love to invite Lynn and Bill up at this time to share some opening words for us.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Earlier this spring, Bill and I were lamenting the increase in anti-Semitism in the United States and around the world, on college campuses, and in the city of Denver. We were very concerned with the lack of knowledge of history in young people, the protests on the campuses and cities, and the horror that Israelis were going through and continue to. We decided we needed to put some money forward to do our small part to improve the situation. We brought a proposal to Rabbi Shulman and Amy Karp, our engagement director, offering to sponsor speakers and educational programs through the HEA to address anti-Semitism and provide pro-Israel education. My parents grew up in Germany in the 1920s and 30s. And so they saw anti-Semitism firsthand and taught me and my brothers to always stand up against it. It is because of that that Bill and I are honoring my parents' memory by sponsoring programs like the one tonight. There was no one in the 1930s like Shai Davidai in Germany or anywhere, and truly there really aren't too many people like him in 2024. And we are really blessed to have him here tonight with us. We want to thank Rabbi Shulman and Amy for working with us to create this program. And in April, we will be hosting Yossi Klein Halevi from the Hartman Institute from Israel here, and keep your eyes open for other programs that will be coming along. Thanks.
Thank you. And we want to wish a Yom Huledet Sameach, a happy birthday to Bill, who just had a big birthday. Shai Davidai is the assistant professor of Columbia Business School in New York City. He received his undergraduate degree at Hebrew University of Jerusalem and holds a PhD from Cornell University. He describes himself as Jewish, Israeli, father, partner, Zionist, and Jewish civil rights activist. Since October 7th, Shai, as many of you have followed, has been a leading voice against campus anti-Semitism at Columbia University and around the country by exposing the administration's failure to protect Jewish students and Jewish faculty. He testified in June to the Ways and Means Committee in Congress and is a fierce advocate for standing up to hate. He now has a very popular podcast, Here I Am with Shai Davidai, and we are thrilled to welcome him to HEA. And if you have a question that you would like to ask him, there were cards out in the lobby that we can circulate. Amy has some in the back. If you want to write a question, we'll collect them, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end of his presentation. Please join me in a warm welcome for Professor Shai Davidai.
Can I hug a rabbi?
Yeah. Yes, you can always hug a rabbi.
For those of you who didn't hear, I just asked, can I hug a rabbi? It's better to ask than to make a mistake. You can't hear me? Is it? I'll speak up. Okay. So before I begin, I want to dispel some notion. Bill and Rabbi, you're all wrong. There's nothing special about me. And it's actually the reason, one of the main things when I go around the country, actually now around the world, speaking, the reason I started my podcast, the reason I do a lot of what I do is to get people to understand that there is nothing special about me. If you met me on October 6, 2023, you would probably not have even done a double take. You'd have just like walked by because I really am a no one. I'm a nobody. But when I say that, I don't say it out of some sort of false humility. I don't say it out of some lack of confidence, which I have very little of. But because I know myself, I know my story, I know where I came from, and I just found myself in a situation where I was standing in a circle at Columbia at a vigil, and people were speaking up, and they were talking about their experiences. There was a woman that was working with the hostages. This is October 18th, before the names of the hostages have become household names. But she was able to tell us things that she heard and saw. There was a student that was attacked on campus. Again, he was attacked on October 17th, which is something that we were like shocked. How could this happen? And people were talking about their own experiences, but no one was talking about the elephant in the room or the elephant on the quad, which is the administration. And I just wanted someone to say something. And I was looking and I was looking and I was looking and no one was saying it. So I said, somebody has to say something. I guess that has to be me. But that's it. That started everything. It wasn't, if you ask my parents, if you ask my wife, if you ask all my friends, I am the least brave of anyone. I am the person that, when we were teenagers and you go and you like find a watering hole and everyone jumps, I'm the one taking care of the towels. Like I'm not a courageous person. I'm not an adventurous person. I've always had very, very strong political convictions, but I'm not a political person. I'm just someone's dad. That's it. And as someone's dad, I felt I have a responsibility. And just what I did. And the reason I wanted to say this, I wasn't planning on saying this, but the reason I said this is because each and every one of you is someone's dad, or mom, or grandparent, or someone's child, or someone's cousin, or someone's sibling. Each and every one of you has that ability to take this upon you. And I'm not expecting anyone to do what I'm doing. I can hardly do it myself, but we all can do something, and that's what I'm going to talk about. The one thing that I would say before I start is feel free to. Is it okay to videotape here?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah, but also feel free to videotape. Feel free to do this. My goal is to get the message going. That's my goal. And there are a few hundred people here, which is incredible. But I understand that there are 100,000 Jews in Denver, and I want them to get the message. But more than that, I want, the millions of non-Jews to get the message, because this isn't about Jews. This is about America. This is about Western values. So if you find something that I say today that is insightful or interesting or important, send it to someone. Send it to one Jewish friend and one non-Jewish friend, just to get the message going. And even if we don't agree, that's a conversation. We need to have these conversations. Okay, so I typically speak off the cuff, as you probably know. I have prepared a few notes for myself, because there's a few things that I think are extremely, extremely important for me to like, if I board a plane tomorrow and I haven't said these things, I will be angry at myself. So and they're not necessarily positive things. This is another thing that people need to know about me. I'm not a motivational, inspirational speaker. I'm not the kind of person who's like, okay, I'm going to give you a 15-minute TED Talk and you're going to feel good about yourself and go back to work. Probably not. I'm the kind of person that will say something that you're like, oh, I was trying not to think about that. But it's important to say. So the 4 things that I want you to go away with today is 1, and I'll expand on them, but 1, there's no going back. If you think that there's going back, then I feel for you. I want to believe that too, but there's no going back. And I'll expand. Number 2, no one is coming to save us. Number 3, it's up to us to save ourselves, but none of us are doing enough, including myself. And number 4, what we're dealing with is very complex, but it's not complicated. So let me break that down. There's no going back. What do I mean by that? What we have seen in the past year and change, we cannot unsee. We cannot unsee the chants that we have been seeing. We cannot unsee the signs. We cannot unsee the violence. We cannot unsee the indifference. We just can't. And when I say can't, I mean I can't unsee them, but also I refuse to allow anyone else to unsee them. Because if you think back to October, November, maybe early December 2023, almost every Jew that you know around the world was shocked. Almost every Jew that you know was giving money, was signing letters, was signing petitions, was writing letters, were meetings. Everyone was shocked. But then our psychological defense mechanism kicked in. And many, many Jews decided to go back to their normal lives. And I don't blame them. I don't blame anyone who's gone back to their normal lives. We are not supposed to suffer because someone else is attacking us. Yet, many Jews, when they went back to their normal lives, have also forsaken their role at the post, meaning have stopped defending and stopped fighting back. Around May, So about 5 months ago, a colleague of mine, a friend and a colleague of mine, a Jewish woman, asked me, when do we go back to normal? And if you're honest with yourself, you've probably asked yourselves and others, when do we go back to normal? And what I told her, the answer that I told her surprised me as well, which is never. If we go back to normal, I have failed, and this has all been for naught. I don't want to go back to normal. A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, everything that we're seeing, all the hate, was there. It was just underground. I don't want to go back to that. I want to create a new normal. I want to create a new normal where it's unacceptable for that hate to exist. On the way here, I was telling Bill and Lynn, my fight is not with the haters. My fight is with those that allow the hate to happen. There will always be anti-Semites. If someone thinks like we can rid the world of anti-Semites, then that's very nice, but you're fooling yourself. But we cannot accept a world in which the anti-Semites are given free rein to the institutions that we are a part of. So when I say we're never going back to normal, I mean it. Columbia University in 5 years from now cannot be the same as Columbia University was 5 years ago. We have to make sure that this will never happen again. Now, here's why. I'm going to say a few things that, again, are distressing, but they're the truth. One, maybe the first one is not distressing. Israel's going to win this war. Israel's going to win this war. Now, when I say win, my son asked me who's winning the war, and I told him no one wins in wars. But Israel's ahead. Because you don't win wars. Today, 4 soldiers died. 101 hostages are still being held captive. You don't win wars, but Israel will come ahead. I'm not worried about that. The second thing, we all know, if we're being honest with ourselves, that this isn't the last war. There will be another war, 5, 6, 7, 8 years in the future. I'm not worried about this war. I'm worried about that war. Because if this is how the world is reacting now, if this is how the university administrators and presidents are reacting, if this is how the media is reacting, if this is how our politicians are reacting now, then 10 years from now, when the old guard, which is more decent, is phased out, and the young blood gets in, which is more controversial, that war will be much harder for us to win. So that's an important thing that I want to remember. We're not going back to normal. Number 2, no one is coming to save us. Now, again, this is a hard one for me to say because we all want to believe that someone will take care of us. Right? We constructed an entire rabbinical belief in the Messiah and waiting for the Messiah. And it's going to be okay, don't worry, the Messiah will come. And when you look at when the idea of the Messiah was created by the rabbinical institutions, was after the destruction of the Second Temple. We were scattered in the diaspora, we were suffering, we had no hope, and we needed hope. And so, in their infinite wisdom, the rabbis of the time created this idea of salvation. We don't do salvation like in Christianity. So we will have that moment where things will clear out. I'm not waiting for the Messiah. I refuse to wait for the Messiah. I want change now. So what many of us have done, in the diaspora especially, is outsource our fight. We've outsourced our fight to big Jewish organizations. I call them the matzo ball alphabet soup of organizations. Like every 3-letter word that has either J, like your synagogue. But now I won't say a bad word about the organizations, because I think the organizations are doing incredible things. People forget that the first 2 months of this war in Israel, we did not know if Israel will make it or not. And one of the big contributions to Israel's survival was the big organization's ability to fundraise, to reach hundreds and thousands and millions of Jews, many of them probably here in this room, and to help. The organizations are great at fundraising and funneling money. The organizations are great at lobbying politicians. They are great at doing media, right? Getting our story out in the media, and they are great at teaching, at educating. If it's opening up a new Jewish kindergarten to having programs for high schoolers, whatever it is, we're good at educating. But there's one thing that the organizations are not good at because they are not built for it, which is mobilization. None of the large Jewish organizations are built for mobilizing Jews. And that is a problem. Because at the end of the day, when a university administrator, university president, or a mayor of a city, or a governor looks and sees that the number of people showing up on the streets, we're not being represented there. We are not the ones making noise. And when you make noise, you get heard. So while the organizations, the big Jewish organizations, have been doing a lot of great stuff, they're just not built for this fight. They're not built for this war. And you can't blame someone for not doing what it's not built to do, but you also can't accept the reality as it is. And that's why it gets me to the third point, which is none of us are doing enough. Now, I'll be very, very transparent about this. I don't think I'm doing enough. When I'm at home, after we put our kids to sleep and my wife and I get like an hour of just talking and debriefing about our days, we don't talk about what we did. We talk about what there is still to be done. And there's so much to be done. We could all be doing something more. Now, if you kind of been following what I've been doing in the past year, you realize that I am not a big believer in petitions and signing letters. It's good. It's good to have petitions. It's good to sign letters. I will give a shout out to End Jew Hatred. Can you, Lorraine? Lorraine, can you stand up just so people see? End Jew Hatred. And I am not getting anything for pushing End Jew Hatred, but End Jew Hatred is a great organization that allows people that are, to what they do is digital activism, which is there's a problem at the University of Colorado Boulder. This professor, let's write a letter, and then someone writes a letter, and then 30,000 people send that letter. And lo and behold, all of a sudden, we're making some noise, and that problem gets addressed. So everybody, Lorraine can tell you how to join End Jew Hatred. My wife does it every day. It's like 10 minutes. It's 5 action items every day. And the nice thing is, at the end of the week, my wife gets an email, like a letter, a WhatsApp message saying, like, here's what we achieved this week. right? So yes, we can do that, but at the end of the day, we have to show up. We have to show up, and I call it the 3 P's of showing up. We have to be public, we have to be present, and we have to be passionate. And what do I mean by that? Public. Anonymous letters do nothing. But if you write an op-ed with your name and picture, then you're saying to the world, this is who I am, and this is what I am fighting for. We have to be present. Because if we're not present, if we're just fighting on social media, right? A lot of us are doing this, like the social media wars. It feels good, but it doesn't achieve anything. So we have to be out there. And I'll speak about what does it mean to be out there. And we have to be passionate. Because if we're not passionate about what we're doing, if we lose sight of the problem, then we will never be taken seriously. And again, not because people don't want to take us seriously, it's because it doesn't seem like we care. I'll give the example of Columbia University, which you may have heard or not, I have some problems with. Sorry. So, my fight is not with Columbia University. Columbia University has the potential to be an incredible institution. There are alums here. It has some of the greatest minds. It has a lot of resources for doing a lot of great research and teaching, but it's lost its moral compass. And organizations get their moral compass, their North Star from the leaders, from the administration. The administrators at Columbia, the president, Katrina Armstrong, the COO, Cass Holloway, all the cast of characters, it's not that they're not anti-Semitic. At least I have no reason to believe that they're anti-Semitic. I also don't have reason to believe that they're anti-Israel. I don't have reason to believe that they're pro-Israel either. I'm not letting them off the hook. But I have no reason to believe that they're anti-Israel. But I have every reason to believe that they are indifferent to anti-Israel and to Jew hatred. And I have every reason to believe that because of their actions. Now, if I've spent countless hours trying to put myself in their position, because it's very easy to come and shout, but you need to put yourself in the other person's position. What's going on in their minds? Well, what's going on in their minds is they see one professor with, let's say, 25, 30, sometimes 50 Jewish students, and they see a mob of 800 students and faculty. And that one professor is speaking loudly, but speaking about how, this is unacceptable. And that mob is shouting, "Burn it all down." If you do the math, who would you not want to anger? Columbia made a mistake. They think that, I have the power of 800 people mob, but that's how they think. That's why we have to show up publicly, we have to be present, and we have to be passionate. Now, but when we do that, and this is extremely important, we're not like them. I suggest, I don't preach because no one has to accept what I'm saying, but I push for a peaceful and non-violent fight. But too often, people confuse peacefulness and non-violence with submissiveness. And that is a mistake. Just because we are not the kind of people that will say, burn it all down, we're not the kind of people that will physically harm someone, we're not the kind of people that will spit on someone. Like, I don't even understand what kind of person does that. But that's not us. But just because that's not us, doesn't mean that we have to put our necks down for the guillotine. We can fight. We can fight back. How do we fight back? So the first thing that we do, that I suggest, is be Jewish in public. That's the most important thing, being Jewish in public. If it's a yarmulke, if it's a Star of David, if it's your dog tags, if it's your tzitzis, whatever it is, being Jewish in public. Because in the past year, they have made being Jewish in public something to be feared. And I'm here to say no. Being afraid to be Jewish in public is something to be feared. If we reach a point where we are afraid of being ourselves in public, then I'm not sure that I want to stay here any longer. But I do want to stay here. And that's why we all have to be Jewish in public. And let me tell you about I never wore a Star of David before October 7th. Because my Jewishness, my identity, was my business. It was nobody else's business. What kind of a Jew I am, whether I'm a Jew, it wasn't anyone's business other than myself, my wife, my kids, and our home. But the moment they made my Jewish identity a public issue, a problem, then I decided that I am going to be Jewish in everyone's faces. So the first thing I did was I went on Amazon and I, yes, some stereotypes are real, and I looked for a big black Star of David. And I looked for the biggest one that I could wear that wouldn't break my neck. And I showed up in the office on campus with a button-down shirt where like I closed it up to here, so it was like kind of open, like a Don Juan, or if you're Israeli, like Casablanca. And I puffed my chest, and I was like walking like some sort of peacock, right? Because my Star of David was a middle finger to the world. It was childish. I completely admit that was childish. But it showed them that I get to define myself. You don't get to define me. I get to define me. But I've stopped wearing my Star of David for that. I wear my Star of David now for two very different reasons. One, every day that I put it on, it's a reminder. It's a reminder that the work isn't done, and I will take it off when the work is done. And if that's never, then I'll never take it off. I hope it's not never. But it's a reminder for myself. This is in a way, this is my dog tag. I'm in a fight and I'm wearing it to remind myself. But the second reason is for other Jews. Because I know how great it feels when I'm traveling around the world and I'm at an airport and I see someone with a yarmulke or a dog tag or a yellow ribbon, and I feel like I am not alone, right? Ayelet, right? I just feel that. And it's a reminder for me, and it's also a way for me to say, hey, I'm here for you. I'm here for you. And if it's Shabbat and I'm walking around and someone comes up to me and says, hey, are there any news from Israel? Well, I know that they're Jewish and they know that I'm Jewish because this is our secret handshake. So whatever you do, being public about your Judaism, about your Jewishness, is a form of protest. In the same way that I would never advise and never tell anyone to hide their sexual orientation, their sexual identity. I would never encourage anyone to go back in the closet. I refuse to be in the Jewish closet. And in fact, one of the things that I find so interesting, I get to speak with gay and lesbian Jewish men and women, and trans individuals, and bi and queer, is that they feel very comfortable wearing their Jewishness because they say, I've already come out of one closet. I'm not going into another one. So for me, that's the first, maybe most important thing. But it's not just about that. It's about making noise. Now, when I say making noise, I don't expect everyone to just stand in the middle of a quad and start screaming. That's, I have become comfortable with that. I wasn't comfortable when I started. I've become comfortable with that. But I say, make whoever needs to be aware of the fact that Jews are here, aware of the fact that Jews are here. So it's making noise in the media, it's writing op-eds, it's calling into radio stations, and yes, it's protesting. If the university here, Denver University, has any issue, and they know that whatever happens, they will have a protest the next day. The first time, they might not do anything. The second time, they might not do anything. The third time, they might say, you know what? Okay, we'll solve this, because this is becoming too much for us. Now, it's scary to protest, especially for people that were raised to say, keep your head down, stay in school, make a lot of money, and donate to Israel, right? Which is a lot of things we've been told that, right? Well, not me, but, clearly. But it's scary. I'm not expecting anyone to go and stand there by themselves. If people think that I am not afraid, that I'm brave, then it's like, no, I am. Like, when I go at Columbia and protest, or when I protest outside of the CNN offices, or when I protest in downtown New York City and stand there, and I see someone with hate in their eyes, or even scarier, someone with indifference in their eyes, I'm scared. My legs shake. But we're not judged by that. We're not judged by whether we're scared or not. We're judged by whether we're there or not. That's the only thing, whether we show up or not. So I've come up with this idea. I don't know if you've heard about this. It's called a minyan. All you have to do is bring 9 other people with you. That's all you have to do. The idea of a minyan, again, another idea that our ancestors came up with. And I do want to note the irony of an openly atheist Jew at a synagogue talking about a minyan of rabbinical wisdom. But let's put that aside. But they came up with the idea of a minyan when they realized that we will be scattered all around the world. And if we do not have rules that pull us in together as communities, forcing us to be together, then we will just disappear. They realize that if we don't have rules, like having a shiva and saying Kaddish for a year, forcing ourselves out of the house and into the community, then we will disappear. We can take that wisdom to our current days. Meaning, when we need to protest as Jews in the world, then show up with a minyan. All you have to do is get a few friends, ask them if they have a few friends, and that's it. And it will start, and it will start with 10 people. And then the next time, it will be a little bit more, and a few more people, and it will grow. That's how things grow. So you want to be public, you want to be present, and you want to be passionate. But the hardest thing is not starting, it's how to keep going. Now I've seen this a lot. You get people to 1 or 2 protests on their own accord, not because I force them, and they will see how it feels, and they will keep coming on their own. But it's very, very hard to keep going when we don't see an impact in the world. And for me personally, it's been extremely hard in the past month, I've been interviewed a lot about, 1 year into this, how have things changed? So the interviewers, journalists always ask, have things changed at Columbia? And I say yes. And they say, how have things changed? And I say, they're worse. And I mean it. I mean it. Because they are worse. Because we have normalized things that should not be normalized. Because things that a year ago would have shocked us are now just like normal. Now our own we've become desensitized to the hate. Now the hate needs to be higher just for us to even pay attention. So we're not seeing any impact. But the truth is that none of us know whether we have impact or not. None of us know. Because when I speak to an audience, or when I meet some parent and a 13-year-old kid, preparing for a bar mitzvah, I just met a kid, Rafi, his bar mitzvah December 20th. Things stick in my mind, I don't know why. If I meet them and I do something, or they see me say something, I don't know where that would lead them and what would be their impact. And I think about what I've been doing in the past year, and what I want everyone to do is like throwing pebbles into a lake. When you throw pebbles into a lake, each pebble has it starts doing ripples. And you throw more pebbles and there's more and more ripples. You don't know which of those pebbles and which of those ripples will end up dying down and just smoothing out, and which of those will end up actually creating a big wave. You just don't know. The only thing that you have control over is whether you're throwing pebbles or not. That's it. And whenever I feel down, and I promise you that happens, on average, like twice a day that ends with Y, I just tell myself, keep throwing pebbles. We don't know what will change, but we do know one thing. If we don't do anything, it will get worse. So none of us are doing enough, but we can all do something more. Now, don't wait. That's another thing. A lot of people tell me, wow, you're so brave for speaking up when you don't have tenure. I'm going to get tenure and I'll speak up. And then other people tell me, wow, you're so brave for not having tenure. I have tenure. I'm going to get full professor and then I'll speak up. Oh, and then they get full professor. I'm going to get that one big grant and then I'll speak up. And people tell me that I am just an attending, I'm just an intern. When I'm a resident, when I'm an attorney, when I'm attending. Oh, when I'm made partner, that's when I'll speak up. Everybody thinks that the moment they'll reach at the top of the pyramid, for some reason they will start speaking up. So I'll ask you, how many people have you seen at the top of any pyramid speaking up? Don't wait. You will always find a reason why it won't get, I'll speak later. And that ties to another thing. How many of you have thought about your red line? What's the red line? That when you cross, when that line gets crossed, that's when I'll start protesting. I know that my red line. My red line was crossed on October 12, 2023 at Columbia, when I saw people celebrating the rape, murder, torture, and kidnapping of my people. But we all have different red lines, and no red line is better or worse than the other one. But if you don't have your own red line, what will happen is that you will keep pushing your red line. Your mind will find ways to rationalize away the problems. And your red line will always stay just away from your reach. So you have to know your red line. And that's something, by the way, that I hope if you go home today and like on the drive home, and if you get stuck in traffic, which I hear now is more and more common in Denver, that you have that conversation. What is our red line? What is our red line for protesting? That's the first red line. What is our red line for packing up and leaving? That's our second red line. If you don't have that conversation, you'll find yourself in a situation where you want to act, but it's too late, and you're no longer able to act. I told you it's going to be depressing. But here's the fourth and final point. What we're dealing with now is complex, but it's not complicated. There's a difference between complex and complicated. Yes, it's complex. No one knows how to solve the Middle East. No one knows. If someone knew, if someone would have known, they would have done it already. And when I say the Middle East, I'm not just talking about Israel, Gaza, the West Bank. I'm thinking Lebanon, I'm thinking Iran, I'm thinking Qatar. Like, no one knows. But that's there. Think about here. No one knows how to solve all the issues with higher education in the United States. No one knows how to solve all the issues with city halls in different places. Like, why does San Jose, California, pass a ceasefire resolution about something 5,000 miles away? Why do they think anyone there listens? Like, but it's complex. It's not complicated. It's not complicated because there is a right side and a wrong side. One of the most dangerous ideas that have proliferated in Western higher education in the past 20 years is that there are no truths. It started off with a very good idea, a very noble idea. But people have different experiences, and we should listen to their experiences. We should platform their experiences. We should look at the reality from different angles. And that was such an important idea because for many, many years, we've only heard one side. We didn't hear the stories of women, of people of color, of people with differing sexual orientations and identities, of people that are not neurotypical. We didn't hear all those different aspects. So it was an important thing. But then academics took that a step further. And they said, it's not just that we should look at things at different perspectives. It's that every perspective matters at the exact same level. Okay, now we can argue about that, but it still sounds okay. Like, what would my perspective matter more than your perspective? Of course. But then they took it a step further, and that's when it became dangerous. If every perspective matters at the exact same weight, then no perspective matters, and there is no truth. And that is something that is just morally unacceptable, but also just realistically wrong. When I go to the supermarket and I tell them, no, I don't have to pay you, and they tell me, yes, you have to pay, it's not that we are both equal here. There are some truths. And that is the thing. Sometimes things are just morally wrong. When I said on October 18th, 2023, rape is never, never, never okay, I was stating a truth. I was not stating a political opinion. I was not stating an ideological position. I was stating a truth. If someone wants to argue that it's sometimes okay, then we can have that discussion, and then we as a society will have to decide. But until we have that discussion, which I hope we never will, it's a truth. And whether you stand with the rapist or the victim is not complicated. Whether you stand with the person that kidnapped a 9-month-old baby or the person that says, free that 9-month-old baby is not complicated. Whether you stand with the side that says you don't deserve to exist, and the side that says, why don't we both exist, is not complicated. So it's complex. How do we solve these issues are complex, but it's not complicated. I can go on and on and on for a lot. We'll open it up for questions, but I just want to say one thing. That's a lie. I've been talking for a while. That's not one thing. But one last thing. I am not fighting against anti-Semitism. I don't want to define my life, my actions, my fight by someone else. First of all, because it's not anti-Semitism, it's Jew hatred. The word anti-Semitism was coined in the late 19th century by Wilhelm Meyer, a German anti-Semitic scientist who felt that it was beneath him to use a word like Judenhass. It sounded too crude to say Judenhass, which means Jew hatred. So he came up with a scientific term, which takes the sting away. It's just anti-Semitism. So no, it's Jew hatred. But I'm not fighting Jew hatred. I'm not fighting against, I'm fighting for. I am fighting for Jewish civil rights. That's why I'm fighting. Jewish civil rights. Because we, in the diaspora, have internalized certain things and normalized certain things that are just not normal. The fact that I can go and speak at a church and there will be no guard, but every synagogue that I go to will have multiple guards, means that we as a community are not entitled to the same protection as everyone else. The fact that Columbia University held, and especially Columbia Business School, which is where I teach, held its graduation on the Shabbat, meaning that a student that has paid $200,000 cannot attend their own graduation, means that that student is not getting the same treatment as every other student. There are many, many things that we have internalized that we are now taking as normal. But when you look at it, and maybe it's because I didn't grow up in the US, maybe it's because I moved to the US, but I see them as not normal. There is no reason for kindergartners to pass a police guard on the way to school. And there's definitely not a reason for the own community to pay for that police, for that guard, rather than the city that's not doing its work protecting everyone. So, yes, right now we're fighting against this wave of Jew hatred, but this fight will not be over when the wave subsides. Because this fight is the fight for our lifetimes. It's a fight until Jewish individuals and Jewish communities are accepted as equal and protected as equal everywhere, no matter where you are. So thank you so much. No, sit down. Oh. Really, no, sit down. This is too much. We're going to start having questions. I must warn you, as you probably assume already, every short question gets a very long answer. I'll try to get to as many questions, but yeah.
So a lot of the questions have to really come from a place of so many of us worrying about college campuses. Mm-hmm. Will our children be safe on college campuses? How do we hold universities accountable? How much do withholding donations matter? And also, you talked about how things have gotten worse at Columbia. And so a question about really, what is the future of academia? Are you optimistic? What is making you feel like there might be opportunities for optimism, or how dismal is it out there?
Oh, so something simple. All right, let's start with the first thing. Should you send your kids to Columbia and all these other universities? You should send your kid to wherever they want to go, period. Wherever they want to go and can get admitted. there is no reason why a bright Jewish high schooler who's, sorry for the language, busted their ass, working, taking the SATs, learned so hard, got into an Ivy League school, and would then not go just because they're Jewish. That is unacceptable. That's what they want. And that's exactly what we won't let them do. Now, when you send your kid, you have to send them with open eyes, meaning they need to know that they are going there not just as Ayelet, they are going there as Ayelet the Jew. Sorry, Ayelet. They are going there to a fight. It's not a physical fight, but it's a fight nonetheless. And they need to be prepared for that fight. Just like you have conversations with your, I assume you have conversations, I hope you have conversations with your high schoolers about what do you do if, your friends go out drinking and, and this is, how do you deal with that? What do you do if you have a daughter and you're late at night at a party and your friends are leaving and you want to stay and somebody has to walk with you. You're preparing them for all the difficulties and dangers of the world. Well, guess what? Jew hatred is there. So you have to prepare them. The example I give to people is this. Today's, what is today? Wednesday? Tuesday. See? I focus on some things, not on others. On this Friday, on Shabbat, if you're having Shabbat dinner with your high schoolers, maybe even middle school, try to convince your children that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. And tell them, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Because if they can't prove you wrong, someone who agrees with them that Israel is obviously not, you don't just get to define words based on your ideology, but if they can't convince you, someone who loves them and agrees with them, how will they stand in front of a classroom of 20 students and a professor who's telling them otherwise? You have to have these conversations. If they don't have the facts, go and read with them the facts. There are many books out there. There's many things online out there. I'll stay away from Al Jazeera, but other than that, but so you want to work with them on the facts, but maybe your kid, which I've seen a lot of kids, they're really good on the facts. They know the facts. They're brilliant, but they don't know how to stand up for themselves. They don't know how to convince and argue. So you work with them on that. But you have to get them prepared for that. That's the first thing. The second thing, and this is, unfortunately, there's not a lot of young people here, but this is also something you can tell your children, your grandchildren. Just like the minyan idea with protests, the same thing with campus. When they get admitted, before they get to campus, before they get to college, when they're still in senior year, they should already start reaching out to other Jewish kids that have been admitted. They should start looking up, where is the Hillel, where is the Chabad, do they have a student supporting Israel in SSI? Do they have a Jewish on campus? Different organizations. And they need to go and connect with them. Because college is difficult enough without having to deal with the fact that you feel like a social pariah. And yes, right now, if you ask Jewish students on campuses, speaking up for Israel, not Israel the state, not Israel the government, Israel the idea, is social suicide. And you need to arm them with that friendship, with that relationships. Now that minyan may not work for synagogue, but it will work for college. It doesn't have to be just Jewish kids. It can be our non-Jewish allies. There are many non-Jewish allies out there. So that's how you prepare them. You prepare them, you give them the shield and the armor, the ideological shield and armor, but you also tell them you can't fight this on your own. That's what you do with your kids. What do you do with your money? There are different arguments about donations to campuses. I very early on in a very highly attended Zoom webinar, me and Jonathan Greenblatt from the ADL, he's a great guy, that question came up. Donate or don't donate? Now, in the Talmudic way, I'll first show his ideas, but I do want to give his ideas, the respect. His idea is this. If we are not there, if we don't have a seat at the table, imagine what will happen if we don't have a seat at the table. My retort to that is, if we've been having a seat at the table for 100 years and this is what's happening, why do you think it will change if we stay at the table for 100 years more? I don't know what the answer is. I do know two things. One, I personally wouldn't give a dime to Columbia University so long as it hires people like Joseph Mossad, who wrote on October 8, 2023, that he experienced jubilation and awe seeing the massacre. And on this October 7th, just so you're not mistaken, this October 7th, while I was on campus, and that's what got me suspended, he was in Turkey at a conference organized by Sami al-Aryan, who pled guilty and was deported from the US. He pled guilty for giving material support to the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and he organized a conference to commemorate the Al-Aqsa flood, the massacre, and Joseph Mossad gave a keynote speech. So I know that I would never give even $1 to Columbia, because a fraction of that dollar goes to his salary. That's the first thing I know. The second thing I know is, if I want to do good in the world, and I have the means to do good in the world, probably universities are not my first choice. There's so many things that you can do with your money. Jewish organizations and non-Jewish organizations, hospitals, schools, fire departments, there's so many things. But here's the solution that I came to, because people, they like thinking about ideas. They say, okay, but tachlis, what do we do? And this is my solution. You don't keep pressing play, but you don't press stop. You press pause. You press pause, and you write a letter to whoever is the person that's schnorring your money from the university you're giving to, and you tell them, I am pausing my donations until, and you give them some concrete things based on what's happening in that university and your preferences. A, B, C, and D. You don't go in too many things because you don't want to make it impossible for them, but you also want to get them working. Here's why I'm pausing my money until these things happen. When those things happen, I will resume donating, and to add an incentive, I will back pay everything that was lost. Not with interest, but that way, you at least you give them the stick, but also the carrot. That's how I think about donations. Now, the bigger question of what's going to happen at these universities, unless things change, nothing. I watched a movie yesterday that it's coming out. It was like a pre-screening called Blind Spot. It's a movie that was made about universities. Anti-Semitism at universities started like 2018, so it then crosses to post-October 7. And you see one thing that's like very, very, very interesting. Every university had a different way, a different incident of anti-Semitism that was different than everything else. University of Vermont, a student was telling about how he was sitting in his dorm. His dorm was in the Hillel, like the Hillel is in the dorm, and other students threw rocks at all the windows. University of Tulane, a student was videotaped saying, F Israel, bomb it, it should never exist. University of CUNY, on 2022, the law school at CUNY, the commencement speaker was Nasreen Kiswani, who is the head of Within Our Lifetime, a hate group that is, among other things, protested outside of the Nova Festival exhibit and outside the Cancer Ward of Memorial Sloan Kettering. The year after, they brought an equally rabid anti-Semites to speak at the convocation, at the commencement speech. Columbia was there. Like, every university has a different kind of anti-Semitism. But the one thing that they all had in common was the indifference of the administrators. And until that changes, nothing will change. Until the administrators, the presidents, it depends on the context, individuals, are either shaken up or get pushed out, nothing will change. And unfortunately, that won't happen until our non-Jewish friends and neighbors and allies start raising some noise. And I give the example of Liz McGill, the president of UPenn. She was there, there was three presidents, right? Harvard, Penn, and MIT. The president, Claudine Gay, resigned, not because she couldn't condemn the calls for genocide for the Jews, but because she was caught, plagiarizing, and then tried to cover it up. And then because she tried to cover it up, they found more plagiarizing. The president of MIT is still there, has many Jewish faculty, staff, and students, but calling for a genocide depends on the context. The president of Penn was the most interesting to me, Liz McGill. She was there, said that calling for the genocide of Jews depends on the context. The next day, she made a horrific apology video where it was like, you should probably fire your PR team. And she stayed there. Then a few weeks later, she resigned. Why did she resign? Because a non-Jewish donor threatened to pull away $100 million in donation. It was a stock that they gave to the university. Now, this was after UPenn has lost millions and millions of dollars from Ron Lauder, who said he's not donating. They've lost several other very, very big Jewish donors. But the moment one big non-Jewish donor said enough, that's when she resigned. Why? Because they can deal without us. But they started seeing it circulating outside of control. So that's why it's so important that we don't just keep it within ourselves, but speak, even if it's uncomfortable, with our non-Jewish friends. You're sending your kid to college. Where are you sending your kid to college? Well, what are you concerned about? I'm concerned about roofies. I'm concerned about Jew hatred. Ooh, So both horrible, but let's talk about it, right? So unless we get them engaged, we won't be able to change the system. Told you it's going to be a long answer, but you ask a very long question, so yeah.
All right, let me give you one more cluster of kind of questions.
Ooh.
How do you talk to Jews? You've talked about they, right? Not these Jews, but the Jews on college campuses, whether it's students or professors, who you see at the encampments, who are sympathetic to the other side. How do you talk to those students? I'm sure you've talked to a lot of them at Columbia and other universities. How do you approach them? And then who seem to understand, in many ways, Jews as being in a different position as an oppressor than where you might come from, where most of us might be coming from. Someone wrote, Jews don't fit into the DEI paradigm. Okay,
let's split those two. All right, yeah, because those are two different. And first of all, I don't think those Jews have. Well, I didn't need to do that. Those Jews have more sympathy to the other side. I actually think they have less sympathy for the other side. I think they're infantilizing the other side. As someone who grew up in the Israeli left, someone who has always been open and about his belief in Palestinian right for self-determination, that Israel has a right to exist, and state of Palestine has a right to exist, and I don't know what the formulations are. I don't know how it will be, but I believe in both, if not for moral reasons, then for practical reasons. As someone who has volunteered, like with Palestinians, I have a lot of sympathy for innocent civilians on the other side. I have a lot of sympathy for parents like me who don't know what to do because the war is everywhere. I disagree with them with the reason for those bombs, because I have no sympathy for terrorists. I have no sympathy for Hamas or Hezbollah. I have a lot of sympathy for the Iranian people. I have zero empathy for the IRGC. So it's not about sympathy for the other side. They have sympathy for the terrorists, for who they call the martyrs. That I don't have sympathy. The truth is I don't. I don't speak. I'm not built for that. My wife is. My wife is the more empathy-laden person in our life, maybe the only person with empathy in our life, but she engages in these conversations. She gets into arguments. She tries to show people the other way, and then I console her when it doesn't work. No, that's, yeah, and look, it's important. It's important to talk. I just don't have the energy, and that is not where I want to spend my energy. On the 5%, the sliver, or 10%, whatever it is, the sliver of Jews that for some reason have removed themselves from our community. I'd rather spend my time with the 80% of Americans, mostly non-Jews, who have no idea what's going on. But I've spent a lot of time thinking about these anti-Zionist Jews. And let's do another Dvar Torah. There are 4 main fasts in Judaism, right? Yom Kippur, which we fast for, to atone for our sins. Tisha B'Av, where we fast for, and when I say we, this year is the first time I fasted ever, so you. Fast for Tisha B'Av, where we fast for the destruction of the Second Temple in the 70 CE. Ta'anit Esther, right, which is, preparing for Esther going and saving the Jewish people. And then the 4th one, which is Gedalia, Tzom Gedalia, right? Rosh Hashanah Aleph Bet, and then Tishrei Gimel Tishrei, Tzom Gedalia. What is the story of Gedalia? I never knew. I was like, oh, it's one of those made-up fasts. Well, does anyone know the story of Gedalia? What? No, not Hanukkah. Gedalia was basically the ruler, the Jewish ruler in I forget if it's Greek or Roman times, and he was murdered by another Jew who was working with the Romans. Think about that. Our ancestors thought that was important enough to merit a fast. Think about how many Jews have been murdered. And yet, the one Jewish leader that was murdered by a Jew that cooperated with the other side was the one they chose. Why? Because I believe they were trying to tell us that is the danger. That is the danger. So I've developed this idea, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but humor me for a second, of what is this new anti-Zionist Jews that we see everywhere? It's a sect. It's a Jewish sect. Throughout our history, we've had sects from the fundamentalists and from the Hellenistic. From the fundamentalists, we had Jews like the Prushim, who gave us, they went, they live in the desert, they were so fundamentalist, so extreme, that they couldn't sustain themselves, and they died. They left us the Dead Sea Scrolls. On the other side, we had sects like the Hellenistic Jews, the ones that would bring, other gods into the altar, and, you don't have to believe in gods to say, that's not cool. And they also disappeared. They didn't die, they just disappeared. How many Hellenistic Jews are here? Want to give maybe? No. Right? What we are seeing now, this anti-Zionism is a sect. Right? Because they have taken the one thing that is, you'd say, the most important part of what it is to be Jewish, and they deny that. And that thing is not Israel, by the way. It's not Zion. That's the physical manifestation of the thing. But that thing is peoplehood. Right? We're not just Jews as individuals, we're the Jewish people. Now, it angers me when people say they are not real Jews. They are not. Yes, they are. They are Jews. Like it or not, they are Jews. You know, some people in my family, I say, well, you know, like, we're not anti-Zionists, but, you know, I don't like that uncle. Well, he's family. Yeah, they are Jews. But they have removed themselves from the Jewish people. They've decided that they are no longer part of the Jewish people, meaning the community, meaning the shared culture. We're changing the books because the books, like it or not, has the word Zion in Israel and Jerusalem. They're changing it because they don't like it. They don't want that. So I treat people with respect. When someone removes themselves from the community, from the Jewish people, okay, you're not part of the Jewish people. You're welcome to our synagogues because everybody is welcome, but you don't get to determine how our synagogues work. You're welcome in our Jewish schools, but you don't get to determine the colloquium, you don't get to determine the curricula. You don't get to determine what it is to be Jewish here. You don't like that? Perfect. Build your own. Build your own synagogues. Build your own Jewish schools. Bring your own sukkah liberations that we've seen on campuses this past year, and see how that works for you. But I'm not going to fight for someone who doesn't want to be a part of me, to force them to be a part of me. There's so many amazing reasons to be not just a Jewish person, but part of the Jewish people. If you don't want to be part of the Jewish people, we have a 2-year waiting list. You know? Now DEI, what was the question? Yeah.
This question says, Jews don't fit into the DEI paradigm, but how do we demand the same protections given to other minorities?
Yeah. I think, who wrote that question, if I may out someone? Okay, maybe you don't want, maybe it's a controversial question. That's a great question because you use a brilliant word, paradigm. We don't fit in the paradigm. When I tell people, do you believe in diversity? Raise your hand. Everybody raises their hand. Do you believe in equity? Equity, not equality. Not everyone gets the same, but you get based on what you deserve. Everybody raises their hand. Do you believe in inclusion? Everybody raises their hand. Do you believe in DEI? DEI has become something different than the 3 things that it's supposed to teach. Paradigm is a great word, and I might start using it. I've been calling it the de-ideology. It becomes a sort of a dogma. Because the ideas of diversity, equity, and inclusion are important and beautiful ideas. How can someone say we need less diversity? You can't. When you take those ideas and you put around them an entire theory that has nothing to do with them, and a flawed theory, a theory that puts people on a ladder of oppression, where if your skin has certain melatonin, and if you were born with certain genes and certain chromosomes, you're one way on the ladder, but if you're, let's take the most quote-unquote privileged people, it's a beautiful word, white, heterosexual Christian man, then you're at the top, and you cannot feel any pain because your life has been great. That is BS. And because they've created this entire theory of building DEI based only on our appearances and our sexual preferences, which are important to take into consideration, but because they've only did that, then it's like a kid or maybe not a kid, it's like a dad building an IKEA bed and then finishing it and realizing that there's a piece of it and was like, oh, I don't know how this will work, but I have this piece. And what do a lot of dads do? Hide it so their wives don't find it, right? But that's what they did. They have this entire ladder, and then they have Jews. And where do you place Jews? So they placed us at the top. And then they completely reversed the causality. Because at first it was, we will place the white people at the top. But then if we place the Jews at the top, then they must be white. I'm not white. I'm Jewish. I tell people, like, I pass as white. I benefit from a lot of privileges that being light-skinned I get. If I am pulled over at night by a cop, I am less worried that someone with a darker skin. But I became white in 2010 when I was 27 and moved to the US. And I stopped being white on October 12, 2023, when I realized that the students and faculty at Columbia were protesting and saw me as something that I'm not. So I tell people, we shouldn't throw away the baby with the bathwater. The ideas of diversity, equity, and inclusion are extremely important. If this fight is successful, and I'm able to make my daughter's life safer as a Jew, but I've taken 3 steps back for my daughter as a woman, which she will eventually become, then I haven't done anything. Or if I've made my son's life better as a Jew, but then sometime in the future he'll come out as gay, and his life is worse, I haven't done anything. So it's not about whether DEI is good or bad, but is how do we save it from itself? And DEI, the problem why all these programs are so exclusionary of Jews is because they've been taken over by ideologues. A person to run a DEI program right now doesn't have to have any accreditation, doesn't have to have anything that they're good at other than believing in the mantra of DEI. I want accountants to run DEI. I don't want ideologues to run DEI. I want people that can look at numbers, can look at surveys, can tell us where the problem lies and say, here is the problem. That is how you get diversity, equity, and inclusion. And if not, then I want them to be honest with me and say that what they care about is just diversity and equity. Because Jews, we don't have a problem with diversity. We are represented in colleges and in hospitals and in companies more than our percentage in society. That's almost a tautology, because when you are such a tiny minority, you know, even getting one person in is like, woohoo! Like, you got everyone. But we don't have a diversity problem. We don't have an equity problem. Jews are the second highest earning minority in the United States. Does anyone know who the first is? Indians, right? The Hindus are the first, and Jews are the second. We don't have a diversity problem. We don't have an equity problem. But when a Jewish kid does not feel safe crossing the quad at their college with a yarmulke, we have an inclusion problem. So DEI should either start taking that seriously, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or be honest with us and say, we don't care about inclusion. But things can't continue as we're growing. Can we have one more? Or
yeah, let's one final question. A lot of people are wondering, what's next for you? To the extent that you feel comfortable answering it in front of us.
Did my wife put a question in?
No.
Yeah.
What's next for you at Columbia? What's next for you and your mission?
I've never been asked that in front of a crowd. No, it's good. It's a.
We are taping, but we won't share it with your boss.
No, definitely. Look. Here's the thing. When I started this, I had no idea what I'm getting into. I wasn't even thinking. I just did it. When I speak with high schoolers, like Jewish high schoolers, I tell them the story of Moses. When did Moses become Moses? When he walked outside of the palace and he sees the Egyptian slave runner beating a Jew and just jumps into action. And he's not like, I wonder if that's good or not. Like, he just doesn't do it. Like, and Talmud says that he doesn't even know he's Jewish at the time. He wasn't aware that Jews existed because he was pampered in a palace, right? But he just jumps into action. And I'm no Moses, right? But I jumped into action and I just found myself where I am. And every day, something new happens. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know even a month from now what will happen. I do know this. I refuse to unsee the things that I've seen, and I refuse to normalize things that are not normal. What I want to do is keep the message going and amplify as many people as possible. And that's why I started my podcast. My podcast wasn't like, people need more Shai in their lives. Definitely not. It was because I have been so fortunate to get a platform that I didn't ask for, wasn't planning for, but I was so fortunate, and I want to give that platform to as many different people as possible. So what I'm hoping to see is that we will all rise together in some sort of real Jewish civil rights movement. It might not be this year or next year, but I believe that it's coming. And if I get to play even a minor part, I definitely don't want to be in the lead. I don't want to be the person on the placard, but if I get to play even a minor part in that, then I think my work will be done. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And sorry for going over time. Yeah. I yell it, sorry. I was like, I kept.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Feel free to grab a little treat on the way out, and feel free, if you'd like to ask Professor Davidai any more questions, you can find him here. Or a selfie, or a... Thank you again.